From Tim L. Tim L writes, Sheehan, calm the blank down? Question mark. I can't calm down after that crap. It must get better Monday night. This from Austin. Kevin, I know you don't care much about this, but it looks like they're living off last year's success. Overconfidence would be devastating to a team that overachieved as much as this team did last year. Good to be back. I missed yesterday because I had a flight canceled back from Florida on Sunday night. I was planning on being here yesterday. Big storms in the Delray Palm Beach area, and the flight got canceled. So I had to come back to yesterday morning, thanks to Denton and Max. Denton's the best, and he filled in more than I'm sure admirably. Thanks to him. We're here today, tomorrow, Thursday. They are intra-squad scrimmaging today out in Ashburn. The Burgundy versus the Gold team. We'll get Ben on at 12 to tell us how that went. Dan Quinn spoke this morning, answered a question about Terry McLaurin. You will hear that. I'm going to take the first part of this show to just, recap a bit, I guess, the preseason opener against the Patriots. Let me just start with this. Did you know that the 48 points scored by New England on Friday night were the most in a preseason game since 2022? 2022, the Dolphins beat the Eagles 48-10 in the preseason. The Eagles did go on to have a rather decent season, 14-3, and they went to the Super Bowl, where they lost, an epic to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. So it didn't really impact them much, giving up 48 and getting blown out. The most points, so that equaled the 48 by the Patriots. You got to go back to 2018 to find more than 48 scored in a preseason game. The Dolphins did that. The Packers did that, 51 points against the Steelers in a preseason game. Also, did you know that the overs in preseason week number 1, Max, went 14-2? 14-2.
Yeah, they're getting us, Kevin. They know exactly what we want in preseason. They know we like the unders, and here we are now. They've taken full advantage.
Well, the totals are so low for preseason games, they're all in the 30s, basically, and some very low 30s, because typically, there are a lot of 16-10 games in the preseason. Not this past weekend. 8 teams scored 30 or more points in preseason week number 1. Last year, just 2 teams in week number 1 scored 30 or more. Is it significant? No, it's not. Nor is, what happened on Friday night. God, some of you are going to hate me for this take, but let me get to it. I am completely unconcerned about Friday night's result. Austin writes, as I mentioned, they're living off last year's success. Who's they? Do you know who played in the game, Austin? 39 of the 58 players who played in the game won't be on the roster in 3 weeks. So that's the they that you're talking about. Overconfidence? Who's overconfident? The players that are going to play against the Giants weren't dressed for the game. What are you talking about? So 58 players played in the game, all right? 58. These would be position players, not counting kicker, punter, long snapper, and holder, which, oh, by the way, is our punter in Tressway. Of those 58, 19 of those will likely make the team. 39 won't. How do I know that? Well, because of the 30 that didn't dress or didn't travel to the game Friday night, 29 of those are pretty much locks to make the team. In fact, every projected starter sat on Friday night, with the exception, again, kicker, punter, long snapper, and maybe Josh Connerly Jr., the first-round pick who played 21 snaps on Friday night. The 39 players out of the 58, if you assume 29 of the 30 are going to make the team, and the kicker, the punter, the long snapper are going to make the team, and they'll probably add another player or two that's not on the roster now that will be on the opening day roster. That's 34. They got 53. That's 19. If you subtract 19 from 58, that means 39 of the players who played on Friday night will not be with this particular organization on its 53-man roster on opening day. Some will be on the practice squad. Some will. So, yeah, I am totally unbothered by what happened on Friday night. I think most of you are with me. I think this is a social media thing where people are alarmed. And look, I observed the same thing you did. It's just how we processed it. I observed a team that wasn't energetic or certainly didn't match the energy, with the exception of a few players like Jeremy Reeves as an example, didn't match the energy level or the enthusiasm level or the intensity level of Mike Vrabel's Patriots on Friday night, especially in the first half. I observed how sloppy they were. I did. The 13 penalties for 98 yards, the drop passes, the missed tackles, etc. I observed all of that. It just doesn't bother me even in the least, because those players aren't going to be, for the most part, on the team when they open up with the Giants on September 7th. We do this, people. We do this every year. I know it's a different team and a different reaction because they were good last year. And there's more anticipation and more excitement about the upcoming season than there's been for any team in decades. Okay. I think it's probably the Kevin in Arlington, when we did this last week, and I said, I think it's the most anticipation for a season since 2000. 2013 obviously was a big deal, but we didn't know what RG3's physical status would be. And Kevin said, what about 2004? Gibbs' return. Yeah, that's true. We were really excited about Gibbs's return in 2004. So I get the heightened, interest, but maybe that's part of the problem, is that a lot of these people weighing in and being super panicked by what happened Friday night haven't really paid attention for the last many years, but most of them are NFL fans. Like, it just doesn't matter, people. Now, Monday night, will we get starters playing? Yeah, we will, but not for an entire game. Probably for a series or two. That's not a real concern level if they don't play well. Look, I pointed out on Friday night, late Friday night, after the game, that last year, one of the observations I made was that Quinn seems to have this team energetic, enthusiastic. Yeah, I mean, it was, everybody was learning each other, and he did a good job, but did it carry over into the regular season? I'll tell you what, the least energetic game they played all year was the opener against Tampa. Now, it was hot as you know what. The humidity was thick, and they ran out of gas in that game, no doubt. But I just cannot summon up any kind of concern. I'm not going to try to do it. I'm certainly not feeling that at all in terms of Friday night. Now, observations made about Friday night. Keep in mind, the observations are tricky because who are they playing against? Who are they playing with? Are the players they are playing with going to actually be NFL players? Are the players that they're playing against actually going to be NFL players? What was the context of the play that was called or the drive that was called? Were they trying to evaluate players doing something that we weren't aware of? Because we do know that the preseason isn't designed to game plan wins. It is for the coaches to evaluate players, typically for key roster spots at the back end of the roster. 47 through 53 or 50 through 53, if you've got a team that's sort of already there. Now, you do have starters getting into a rhythm, playing under the lights. You've got some mental toughness evaluation going on, like old Johnny's out there for the first time as an NFL player. Did he soil himself, or was he a gamer? A lot of the psychological stuff that can be revealing, not to us as much as to the coaches. We can see things like, hey, man, he missed 2 field goals. Well, Matt Gay missed 1. Or the running back fumbled 3 times. We can see that. We can see a quarterback missing an open receiver 3 or 4 times. We can see 5 drop passes. Most of what we can observe tends to be more on the negative side because the positive results sometimes are misleading as well. Again, who's in the game and who's on the other side of the ball. No game planning either side of the ball. New England definitely had a different agenda on Friday night. I think that was obvious. They played their starters a bit. Washington didn't play any of them. They were fired up. They have to change a culture right now. You know, it's where Dan Quinn had this team last year. He had to change a culture. They were 4-13 last year, just like Washington was in 2023. So I cannot. I mean, you'd have to pay me big money to get worked up about the results of a preseason game. What matters this time of year is health, and then things like the Terry McLaurin situation. You know, making sure that your best players, he's going to be on the field, but are, you know, ready to go on September 7th. Now, I do think a debatable topic, and one we've had before this time of year, is should starters play or shouldn't they play? I think they should play. I think they should get into a rhythm and get into the feel of being tackled, of the quarterback actually having the threat of being tackled, under the lights, in front of fans, with referees, with a scoreboard, a clock, the score being kept, etc. Like, I actually think that I've always felt like I'd like to see the starters play a bit more. You know, Cincinnati has started off every regular season with Joe Burrow poorly. So Zach Taylor switched it up this summer. I mean, you know, you can't keep doing the same things over and over again and expect, different results. So he switched it up, and his starters played the first quarter against the Eagles the other night and were very impressive offensively, not so much on defense. That's what their team was last year. And we will get Cincinnati starters on Monday night. I would hope that we'll match that with our starters for a little bit. But even if they get completely outplayed, there's no game planning. You're only in there for a series or two. We've already seen that with this particular group, this particular quarterback, the only way to judge him is over 4 quarters, not 2 series, although they didn't punt much, period, last year. But yeah, and I do think there's some value. We've seen this previous years, saw it a lot with Belichick and Brady's Patriots, where Brady would go out there in the first quarter and throw 16 balls. They wouldn't run it once. And they thought it was important from the standpoint of rhythm and timing, which is the passing game, much more so than it is the running game, to get that work in against somebody else in a game situation, even though it's not, going to be there for all 60 minutes. So I wouldn't mind watching Jaden on Monday night come out and sling it around for a series or two. I don't know what they're going to do. I would assume the starters are going to play. So looking forward to watching that game a little bit more, I guess. But yeah, hard for me to get worked up. Now, the evaluation part, player evaluation, again, tricky for us because of all the things that I said. But the players that stood out to me, I thought Jeremy Reeves had a ton of energy and enthusiasm. Clearly, Johnny Newton had the play of the game. There weren't many to choose from. The sack strip. I thought that the receiver, Ja'Cory Brooks, stood out a little bit. 5 targets, 5 catches. He's a big target. He got a little bit of separation against whom. I'm not entirely sure whether or not the guy that was covering him or the guys that were covering him are going to be on an NFL roster. But, he's 6'3". He's 200 pounds. This was one of the guys they gave money to as an undrafted free agent. I thought that he kind of stood out to me. I thought the tight end that did drop a ball, but also caught a couple of others, 89, Cager, stood out to me. It's so hard to evaluate offensive line play for this time of year. Again, there's no game planning. There's no play calling based on down distance most of the time, a lot of the time anyway. But certainly in reading some of what coaches said, Connerly Jr. had probably a decent day. I thought, from a vision standpoint, I thought Bill Merritt, Ja'Cory Merritt, the running back, even though it was, Max, 7 carries for 22 yards or whatever.
Something like that, yeah.
I actually think that his vision looks like it's there as a runner.
Very much.
These are, again, who's blocking for him, who they going against, but you could see that as a college player, New Mexico in particular. A little bit upright in his running style. We talked about that after they drafted him, knew nothing about him before the draft, just looking at him afterwards, but he definitely has good running back vision. Man, Josh Johnson is just a pro. I don't know if Sam Hartman took. I mean, isn't Josh Johnson going to be the third quarterback anyway? Didn't they sign him understanding that he was going to basically be the Jeff Driscoll of this year? Sam Hartman to the practice squad. I'm assuming that that's what it's going to be. I think Josh Johnson and Adam Peters, he was in San Francisco. Josh Johnson is 39 years old. Jay Gruden called him one of the smartest players he's ever been around. I would assume that his next move is to get into coaching or to stay in football. Maybe it'll be with this organization. But yeah, the other team showed more energy and more effort and executed better in a preseason game in which 39 of the 58 players who played in the game for our team will not be on the opening day roster. So 301-230-0980. I'm assuming that Denton took calls yesterday, but if you want to weigh in with me, phone lines are open, 301-230-0980. I just have zero concern about this football team, despite the result on Friday night. Zero. In terms of because of that. Look, by the way, those that are concerned, you might be proven right. I'm not saying that you'll be proven wrong, but it's not going to be because of what happened on Friday night. If they end up being a less energetic, poorly coached, sloppy football team this year, I don't want to hear people say we saw it in the first preseason game. No, you didn't see it in the first preseason game. The players that ended up being sloppy and less energetic during the regular season didn't play in that game. So I'd like to see it with them in a regular season game before I get alarmed. For me, the biggest area of concern still is defense. What will it look like? Are playing real games. And my biggest area of confidence is the quarterback, who, by the way, was ranked again in one of those quarterback tier situations. We'll get to that on the show today. But 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. What is your level of concern after Friday night? 0 to 5. 0, no concern. 5 is a 5-alarm fire. We're in trouble. Where are you on that scale? Phone calls next. So a couple of things from this intra-squad scrimmage. Terry McLaurin was out there, and there's video of him talking with Adam Peters. Dan Quinn did say there's no update on Terry McLaurin, but I'm wondering, he and Adam Peters yucking it up a little bit? We'll see. I still think there's going to be a contract extension before the regular season. I still think the odds favor that. I think the second odds favorite is, or the second odds choice is he plays on his existing contract. And then I think very, very distant long shot odds are that he holds out, and then near zero, 500,000 to 1 that he gets traded. I don't think it's 500,000 to 1. 3 to 1 to even money that he signs a contract. 2 to 1 that he plays without a new contract, 20 to 1 that he holds out games, and 50 to 1 that he gets traded. Something like that. There's my odds maker work for the day. 301-230-0980. Off that 48-18 loss on Friday night. A 30-point preseason loss. Most points anybody's given up in the preseason in 3 years, where Philly did 3 years ago, gave up 48, and they went on to the Super Bowl that year. 301-230-0980. What's your concern level? 0 concern. That's where I am. 5, very, very concerned. It's a 5-alarm fire concerned. Are there 5-alarm fires? I think there are. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980. Ben's going to join us from Ashburn later on in the show. You'll hear my conversation with Diana Russini this morning, and Neil in Rockville will jump on with us and explain this John Gruden Nevada ruling victory against the NFL. I think we are going to at some point learn about how Dan Snyder and Bruce Allen fit into the leaked emails on John Gruden. All right, 301-230-0980. Where's your concern level? Max, I didn't ask you. We have not talked since the game on Friday night. You're a fan of the team.
Yes.
What is your level of concern?
Level of concern, it's not very high at all. It's preseason, and like you said, very few of the guys who got an extended run last night are going to be playing in the preseason, or are going to be playing in the regular season. So, not very concerned. I mean, I'd like them to sign Terry. I'm kind of at, let's call it a 2. That's where we're at. The only reason it's a 2 is because Terry McLaurin hasn't been signed yet. But, hey, Brian and I sat here for about 10 minutes trying to lip read between him and Adam Peters. So we're working on it, and it seems that they're working on it too. You're trying to lip read this video that I see. Who put this video out? JP put it out. I'm trying a little. JP put it out. Yeah, it's NBC4 kept it keeps popping up on my timeline. So this looks like a tough lip read situation. It's very especially hard for Peters. McLaurin's looking into the camera here. Yeah, it's much Adam Peters is not. Much easier to read. If you're able to pull off any of the lip reading here, please, that's breaking news material. Of course. Lap in DC, concern level 0 to 5. What is it?
I'm probably like a 2 or 3, but I'm a little concerned only because of the depth. I wanted to see some of those guys kind of stand out to kind of give us a little hope. And a lot of those guys probably not going to be on the team. I want to see Bill take one of those running back spots. And then I want to kind of see how many receivers they might go with, or tight ends or running backs. Kind of get a sense where we are, because we really don't know what type of team we have really until the season starts. So it would be good to kind of, be open about, what they're going to be doing and what's their plan. So we kind of not got an idea. So I'm hoping with this next preseason game, or maybe the third, we'll have an idea. Maybe the starters will get in and we can kind of see. But definitely, as Max said, I definitely want Terry in the mix. So, and that's a good sign for him and Adam Peters talking. So hopefully we can get that resolved soon. But by the way, it's a little concerning, but not too much.
On merit. So last year they kept 3 running backs on the 53-man roster. It was Robinson Jr., Eckler, McNichols. Remember, Rodriguez was not on the initial 53-man roster.
Oh,
okay?
yeah, he wasn't. Yep,
So,
you're right. Yep.
so this year, right now, I think Robinson Jr., Eckler, and McNichols are going to be on the roster. McNichols, they like McNichols as a special teamer.
Yeah.
And you know, every opportunity Jeremy McNichols gets, he usually plays pretty well. So to keep Merritt, it would mean no Rodriguez and that they would keep 4 running backs on the roster. I'm not saying that's not going to happen. I think it might happen. But I think McNichols is going to make this roster.
Yeah,
I do.
You're right. I like McNichols. Hey, Kevin, quick question.
Yeah.
Are you concerned about the receivers? Because no one has really separated themselves other than Debo, scratch, Noah Brown being injured and Terry not being out there. But no one really seems to be, because I wanted to see KJ Osborne, even though he played. I wanted to see Gallup. He played, but no one seems to be separating themselves or stepping up in Terry's absence, and that's kind of alarming. I think more than anything. So
I think if the team were alarmed, because remember, Friday night is just one data point in the evaluation of their roster, right? Practices, the joint practice, all probably more important than what happened on Friday night. The team worked out 14 players on Sunday, and they signed 3 yesterday. Not one of them was a wide receiver. They didn't bring in one wide receiver. So I would say that speaks to their lack of alarm about the situation. But part of the lack of alarm is that Terry McLaurin and Deebo Samuel are going to be on the field on September 7th against the Giants, barring injury.
Yeah.
And Noah Brown probably will be as well. And Jalen Lane might be a part of that mix. Who knows? What did he get? Like 19 snaps, something like that?
We just have to see.
Yeah, we'll have to see. I had, thanks for the call, Lap. I had, I'm looking for it right now. I know that there was a lot of this sentiment on social media that Terry really helped himself by not playing in the game. You'll hear Diana Russini. She actually indicates the same based on some of her sources. I don't feel that way personally. I don't know how Terry gained leverage via a preseason game in which actually, if you want to play evaluator, one of the 2 or 3 most impressive players on the field for Washington was a wide receiver, Ja'Cory Brooks. I mean, if you want to, act like that this guy's the real deal based on 5 catches in a preseason game against who knows what the competition was. I just don't see any chance that Terry gained any leverage personally because of what happened on Friday night or what happened in the joint practice. I think for him to gain any leverage financially, I'm not talking about the other piece. We've talked about the emotional leverage he might have with fans, with players in the locker room and people in the locker room and other agents and players around the league. That may be a real thing. I personally don't think it's a thing in which the team would then choose to overpay what they believe he's worth by a lot because of fear of that emotional leverage or the emotional, output from those that would be backing Terry. But in terms of financial leverage, he has none. None. He's under contract. Bay in D.C., what's your concern level? 0 concern after Friday night's 48-18 loss. So that would be a 0, or 5. You are very panicked about what you saw on Friday night. Where are you?
Hey, what's up, Kev? Thanks for taking my call.
Sure,
I'm not worried at all, man. These guys, they're learning the system. They're learning the brotherhood. There's some of them that it's basically like almost a crop of people that's on the team. So I'm not worried about the starters didn't play. My biggest concern is just what you're going to do with Terry. And I'm keeping my eye open on what Tyreek Hill is doing in Miami. Thanks, Kev.
What has he done in Miami? Do you think that if he hung up, that's fine? I mean, is Tyreek Hill legitimately available? Do we think, Max?
I mean, listen, with what he's doing in Miami, it wouldn't surprise me if he was available, because he was a couple weeks ago, he was breaking down coaching staff decisions mid-practice at his presser. and Mike McDaniel didn't seem too pleased with that. So I think he's doing the act like an idiot, and hopefully they'll trade me. So maybe.
I can't imagine personally that that's a straight up trade. Tyreek Hill's just much more of a weapon than Terry is.
For sure.
But at the same time, he is also a risk because of what he is as a person, as a teammate, etc. I don't think they'll want that in the locker room. But can you imagine Jaden Daniels, Deebo Samuel, and Tyreek Hill on the same field?
I would faint, Kevin. I would pass
Bones in Southeast, go ahead. What's your concern level? 0 concern is a 0. 5, you are panicked. Where are you?
Hey, thank you, Kevin, for taking my call, man. I'm at a 2, and that's only because Terry McLaurin ain't on the field right now. So my concern is just at level 2, And man, I just want to give my main man Little a shout out, man. Let him know I played with Mo Taylor and Mike Taylor. I played with all the Taylor boys down there in Bragg Farm. Thanks for taking my call, Kevin. I love you guys, man. Peace.
All right, Bones. All right, Bones. Thanks for the call. Having concern about Terry McLaurin and his status, that's a legitimate concern. That's not, anything coming out of the game Friday night, because he wouldn't have played. Had he been, signed to a contract extension, he would have been one of the 30 players not playing. There would have been 31 not playing on Friday night. So we wouldn't have had any idea what he looked like. I do personally think, and, I'm not always here to give Paulie a ton of credit, but I think his take is a legitimate one, which is it's not okay that he just shows up for the opener against the Giants. He needs to be a part of training camp. There's a training camp shape. There's a conditioning. There's also a rhythm, and especially given that they do have a new significant offensive weapon. And it does seem to me, and I don't have any data on this, that when you get guys like Ayuk last year, right? Finally, they get a deal done. He ends up, I know he blew out his ACL or whatever it was in week 5 or 6. But it does seem like when guys kind of hold out for a while and then report, it either takes some time for them to get acclimated to NFL football, or there is an increased possibility of an injury. Yeah. All right. Diana Russini joined me on my podcast yesterday. You're going to hear that at 11. Neil in Rockville is going to jump on with us next to talk about this John Gruden win yesterday in a Nevada court. This could be entertaining down the road for NFL fans and, in particular, Washington fans. That's next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right, Barstool Sports employee and former NFL head coach John Gruden has won his case against the NFL in Nevada Supreme Court. Gruden accused the NFL of leaking damaging emails in 2021 before resigning from his head coaching job with the Las Vegas Raiders. The NFL will likely appeal the decision all the way up to the Supreme Court. The Commanders, Burgundy and Gold inter-squad scrimmage is today out in Ashburn. Cliff Kingsbury and Bobby Johnson will be the head coaches of their respective Joe Witt will be the head coaches of their respective teams, with assistant coaches, including Bobby Johnson, calling plays. Players out for today's scrimmage are wide receiver Noah Brown, wide receiver Terry McLaurin, quarterback Marcus Mariota, Sam Cosmi, Brandon Coleman, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Jordan McGee, Bobby Price, and Jonathan Jones. The Nats, they fall 7-4 to the Kansas City Royals after Jackson Rutledge gave up multiple 2-run home runs in the 6th inning that seemed to be all she wrote for the ball club last night. They will reset today and look to get one back against Kansas City. First pitch at 7:40. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 7:10. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
So John Gruden won a big lawsuit ruling in Nevada yesterday. The Nevada Supreme Court sided with Gruden in his lawsuit alleging that the NFL leaked damaging emails to the media before he resigned from the Raiders in 2021. In their 5-2 ruling, justices did not determine whether or not the league actually had leaked Gruden's emails, but they found that the league's decision to force his complaint into arbitration proceedings overseen by Roger Goodell, the target of Gruden's civil lawsuit, was, quote, unconscionable, closed quote. Here to explain the ruling yesterday and where it goes from here, and then perhaps how entertaining it could get down the road for fans of certain teams, including ours, is our guy Neil in Rockville, one of our legal contributors to the program. So explain what happened yesterday in maybe more detail than I just did. Talk about what's next, and then we can get to the fun stuff.
All right, so back about a year and a half ago, there was a motion filed to prohibit the case from going into arbitration. And in that case, Gruden won. The NFL appealed to what's called a 3-judge panel, where the entire Supreme Court of Nevada doesn't look at it. Just 3 judges look at it, and they actually ruled on behalf of the NFL. Gruden then appealed to the entire Supreme Court of Nevada, who ultimately ruled, as you stated, in a 5-2 decision that the request by, or the attempt to have the matter be forced to arbitration by the NFL was not binding and unconscionable, as they wrote in their opinion. So what this means is what would have been a private lawsuit or a private trial where everything would have been behind closed doors, now would, if it's upheld, would be reverted back to a normal trial court, which, as everyone knows, is in public. You can have reporters there, and it would be a lot more about the inner workings of not only the NFL, but what actually occurred. And as we're most concerned, more likely than not, who leaked the emails.
All right. So the NFL does what next? Before we get back to why the NFL so desperately doesn't want this to go to court, will the NFL appeal this to the U.S. Supreme Court, do you think?
The only reason I think that they might is the decision by the Nevada Supreme Court is pretty onerous on the part of the against the NFL, because one of their major reasons for making the decision is they basically say that the NFL Constitution, in the arbitration clause in that, only applies to employees. And when they defined employees, they meant only people who were employed at the time of the lawsuit, not at the time of the alleged offenses. So in this case, there's no
wasn't an employee.
When he resigned because of all the leaks and everything like that, at the time he filed, true, he was no longer an employee. But most, clauses, most contracts and everything deal with your status when the events occurred, not ultimately.
So are you leaning towards you don't think they'll appeal it to the Supreme Court, the U.S. Supreme Court, because you think they'll lose?
No, I think they might take a shot at the Supreme Court because it's a bad case they don't want on the record, because other people who they go against in the future would just say, oh, you fired me and I'm no longer an employee, or I quit and then I sued you and I'm no longer an employee. So all this, your constitutional mandates for arbitration no longer apply to me. It was a bad ruling on that part.
All right. So clearly, by the way, could Gruden, not in an arbitration led by Goodell, obviously, I can understand his pushback to that. But is it possible that what Gruden wins in a court of law wouldn't match what he could potentially gain in an arbitration? I'm leading towards Gruden seems intent on clearing his name and burying others as much as winning something in terms of damages. What do you think?
Well, the problem with that theory for Gruden is there's really been no contesting that he wrote those emails. He wrote those emails about DeMaurice Smith.
And they were damaging,
to him. They were extremely damaging. So the substance of trying to clear his name, not quite sure what he's trying to clear his name of. It's not that they
bring others down with him.
Yeah, but now, I mean, they're going to try and bring down, he wants to I think it's more about money than anything else. I don't think he's going to ever clear his name. It's not like he's going to ever be able to get hired back again at ESPN or someone else, because the substance of those emails isn't in dispute. And that's what his and I think that's what his claim is that basically when you leak this, you basically ruin not only my current career, but any chance of me, having a career after coaching.
All right. So that's where we get to. The league does not want this in court where there's discovery, where there are witnesses, et cetera, under oath, right? They don't want that. Tell everybody, in your opinion, what they're really trying to avoid by avoiding a court of law versus an arbitration.
Just basically the public, it's going to be embarrassing for Goodell. Goodell's going to obviously have to sit for depositions. As you said, others in the NFL executive committees are going to have to. Snyder might need to. Allen might need to. There's a lot of things that just are going to possibly come out that the NFL doesn't like their dirty laundry in public. And that's the whole reason why they have a very, very strict arbitration clause in their constitution, which all contracts related to the NFL relate back to and actually incorporate the NFL constitution in their contracts. That's why Gruden's coaching contract incorporated the NFL's constitution and that arbitration clause.
So let's get to, if this thing ends up being tried, these emails, by the way, for those that don't remember, the emails that were leaked were emails between John Gruden and, at the time, our team president / general manager, Bruce Allen. They were obviously very good friends from the Tampa days. They stayed friends. And these emails disparaging DeMaurice Smith in a racially insensitive way, and there's a lot of other stuff in there. Those were emails exchanged with Bruce Allen at the time, and then the emails were leaked. And there is a theory that many of us have had that because at the time Dan Snyder hated Bruce Allen, that perhaps Snyder leaked the emails to damage Bruce Allen, who, by the way, had congratulated Ron Rivera on the hire. Remember that piece of it too. So what do we think? It's been a while on this stuff. Let me just mention one thing. I know that I can sense it already. There are going to be people that say, why do you guys care about this? The only thing that matters is Jaden and the team. Well, because I'm not going to be reading the notes from the trial during the Giant game. Okay, but there are another, 300 hours during the course of a week that I might be able to spend an hour entertaining myself about what happened. We can do more than one thing at a time. We can say winning's important, the games are important, the name's also important, the logo's also important, and this could be, I think, very entertaining. What would you like to see? Do you have any hunch on what we'll see?
Well, presuming let's say they don't appeal to the Supreme Court, and the case is what's called remanded back to the trial court, the district court in Nevada. Well, then they're going to probably sit down and actually consider a settlement, because the NFL doesn't want it, and if Gruden really wants some money, he'll be in the best situation at that point in time, because as ugly as it might get for the NFL, if it's public and they depose Gruden, it doesn't get any nicer for him either.
Right.
So,
he's got to relive the content of those emails.
Exactly. And, Dan Snyder in and of himself is not a party to the case. It's the NFL and it's Goodell. So, what they ultimately may do is they might come to a settlement at that point, because, we're still talking if they don't settle and they have to set things in for court and trial and discovery, you're probably talking at least 18 months to 24 months before they step into a courtroom.
So that's how long it would take.
So, yeah, that's probably how long it would take in a case like this, because the discovery process is going to be long and lengthy. Everyone's going to have to be deposed. Hey, you're going to have to track down Dan Snyder in England, and we know how much he loves being deposed when he's living in England. So who knows, how long it might take for them to, get everything prepared for an actual trial on this, if it went to trial. And in the end, probably not.
Yeah. So you think ultimately this will get settled, but this is the best opportunity for John Gruden to get the most, with the threat of potentially embarrassing the league, even though he'd be embarrassed again as well. But this is the best path to the most money in a settlement.
Yeah, I think this point, but then, and just so you understand the process, they would go through the whole discovery process, and then they would file motions for what is called summary judgment, because I'm still a little unclear about how John Gruden, the basis of his claims, because he wrote the emails, and yes, they were publicized. And in fact, if Dan was the one who publicized them, whether or not that lets Goodell off the hook and or the NFL off the hook, it might actually do that. And the real person he might have, if he wanted to, gone after would have been Dan. And because if the purpose of the release of the emails was actually to embarrass Allen, it just so happened that Gruden was a, quote, innocent bystander
right.
of the release, that negates the intent of the NFL, and it definitely negates any intent by Goodell.
Yeah. I think, this would be so much more interesting I think it could be entertaining, the discovery, if we learn a lot about what was going on. But imagine, Snyder didn't lose the team 2 years ago, still owned it. This would be a huge area of, does Snyder have any culpability? Could it cost him the team if it's proven that he leaked the emails? Doesn't matter anymore because he's not an NFL owner anymore. But that obviously would have been much more interesting back then. Still entertaining now, but much more interesting back then. All right. Anything that I didn't ask you?
Yeah. The one interesting thing is, and I'm just wondering, obviously we haven't seen the sales contract for the team with the new owners, but it was something that we had sort of mentioned early on, is like, is there a clause in there that the Harris Group isn't responsibility for the behavior of Snyder if he were to, if something were to occur under his watch? Because if the NFL does, get a judgment against them, ultimately comes out of the, I believe, owner's pockets. And, would Harris have to, cough up the money for the settlement? Or is there something in the contract that, Snyder would be on the hook for, actions that occurred during his ownership? It may be in there, we wouldn't know until the end, but that could just be a little something that could still, tie Snyder into the whole settlement of the case
there
or the
was that
resolution of the
money
case.
put aside, right, for anything that potentially could sneak up past, the due diligence phase past the actual closing. But I think that may have run out at this point. I don't know. Who knows?
Well, that's what I was talking about. I mean, I don't know if this included, or maybe it's technically still out there as a small pot that they could go after. But whether we see that or not is unlikely.
All right. It's still we're months away, maybe more than months away, maybe years away from actually hearing anything about what happened. That's your guess.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. If this were to proceed into a trial, yeah, definitely at least a year, more likely 18 months to 2 years.
By the way, John Gruden's untouchable by an NFL team, but he could coach in college. I mean, I would imagine an AD somewhere, a school president, wants high-level exposure for their program. I'm surprised that he doesn't consider a college job. I think he'd be a hell of a college coach, personally. But NFL, no way.
Well,
right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And if he were to take a job, he'd actually be negating, I think, some of his arguments for damages.
Yeah. All right. Thanks. Appreciate you doing this.
You got it. All righty. Take care.
Neil in Rockville, everybody. When we come back, you'll hear my conversation with Diana Russini. She had a lot of thoughts on the Terry situation. We'll keep you up to date on what's going on out in Ashburn with the intra-squad scrimmage. Ben will join us at 12 to give us the details. I do want you to know that Window Nation right now has their most popular offer of the year going on. It's 50% off all window styles with nothing owed for 2 years. No money down, no payments, and no interest for 2 full years. So you'll get the benefit of brand new windows right away. Your home will look nicer. You'll save on your air conditioning and heating bills over the next 2 years. By the time you start paying in 2027, you'll be paying half price. All I ask really is that if this is something that you guys in your home have been talking about, you by yourself, you with your spouse, you with your significant other, just give them a chance. Give them one shot to come out and give you an estimate. It's free of charge. They'll get it done in an hour or less. And they'll leave you with a quote. They're not going to pressure you. You can shop it if you want. I don't think you'll find a better company from a product standpoint, a customer service standpoint, or right now, an offer standpoint. Call them at 866-90-NATION or head to windownation.com. Mention my name. They'll take good care of you, and it starts with a free in-home estimate. 866-90-NATION, windownation.com. Joining me right now is Diana Russini, of course, an NFL insider for The Athletic, and of course, locally here at Channel 4 for a few years. I looked this up. Do you know it's been a decade since you left Channel 4 to really launch your national? That's what I'm guessing, that the move to ESPN launched your kind of NFL reporter national career, and it's been 10 years since that happened.
How? The thing is, I actually knew that only because I recently was around the Commanders and got to see the great group of media that covers them so well, and all my old friends. And it's like seeing, it was a reunion. It was like seeing family. Some of the best people I've ever met in my life, not even professionally, just in my life. I met in Washington and covered the team.
Yeah.
So it was so great to see everybody. And look, here's my observation, Kev, from just knowing so many of the reporters that cover the team. When the team does well, it's like everyone's lives are better in general. It's like people are buying houses, having more children, are more in love. And I'm like, maybe this is correlation here. When the Commanders win, everyone wins. So yeah, time has flown, and I would have nothing without my time in Washington. I can tell you that.
I don't know about increasing like love and family size, but it is interesting that for years, as we wallowed in this team's misery, people that have done what I've done, which is, hours upon hours every single day, kind of long form, sports radio, sports podcasting, the whole thing. So many fans would say, oh, you love this. You love the drama. You love how, and I'm like, no, you don't get it. Look, if they were good, do you know how much more lucrative it would be for everybody if they were the Patriots? And sometimes I would say,
I didn't know that. I didn't know what that was like when I was in Washington. I didn't understand, because I used to hear that too.
Yeah.
Like, oh, you just want to stir it up. You want the drama.
Right.
You want RG3 and Kirk Cousins to fist fight for the ratings. And it's what winds up happening is because the team is so bad, it's hard to keep the interest. So most bad teams fall apart. That's usually what happens. So it is a mix of us and them. But it wasn't until I got to ESPN and the way they run their operation is as you grow with the company and run up the ranks, you get the better teams. So by those last few years that I was there, I was covering the Chiefs, the Bills, all the teams that were winning all the time. And I'm like, this is amazing when you cover a team that's winning from a media perspective, because everyone wants to talk, because everyone's happy because they won. And people it's just simple human nature. Everyone's just in a good mood. Their families are happy. So yeah, just seeing that the Commanders' success, and I know it's just 1 year, but we know that the potential's there. And we will perhaps see this again this upcoming season. I sure hope so. But it just truly has an effect on everybody.
Yeah, no doubt. It's much better. Look, 7-9, 8-8 with no drama. That's not great either. And some of those days of real controversy, real drama, the whole thing, it was probably better if it wasn't going to be 12-4 in the postseason, but still winning is so much better than anything else. And by the way, it's so much easier and more fun to talk about. Speaking of winning, let's just get to not the preseason loss the other night, but the big story, which remains the story today here in Washington. What are you hearing about Terry and his contract negotiation or lack thereof with the team? What's the latest?
I continue to hear of all the hold-ins and holdouts and weird contract situations that are going on around the league outside Washington, that this is the best situation in terms of it. People feeling like it's going to get done, that Terry wants to be there, that the Washington front office and, of course, the coaching staff and the team and ownership, they want Terry there. And this is just going to come down to some give and some realities that have to set in for both sides of where things want to be. It's been laid out a million times on your show on what Terry's looking for, why he's looking for it, what the Commanders are wanting and why they want it. And I do think there's a lot of feelings in this one. and that always complicates it because it's not just about the stats and the numbers. And granted, we know that they're using his age as a very, very big reason to all the reasons why the player wants to get paid, right? It's like, well, you're going to be 30 in September. You're going to be 30 in September. You don't historically, receivers aren't getting better after the age of 30. And if you see around the league, most receivers aren't getting paid at the number that McLaurin's camp is looking for at the age he's going to be. So, look, when I talk to other people just around the league watching this, I had one GM describe to me in the AFC. He's like, it's really champagne problems. I don't understand why they don't just kind of meet halfway on this. It doesn't have to be as hard because Washington has such a good situation financially. They've got a young quarterback. And sometimes these are the things you got to do when you're going all in. And I just don't think Washington's willing to do that right now. And I don't think the number that Terry wants is going to be the number that Terry winds up getting. And in the end, yes, that hurts for him. But, Washington knows, and especially after seeing some of these practices, I saw him myself, Terry McLaurin needs to be a Washington Commander.
So let's just start with the assumption. You've had some reporting. ESPN's had reporting. We're finally in that 25 to 33 range. Terry wants, let's just call it 33, the DK Metcalf deal or somewhere around there. And the team's offered 25, which is basically a 10% increase from where he is right now. Why do you think, from the team standpoint, they don't see him as worth more than that?
Because of what I just said about the age. And I think a lot of Terry's case, we'll call it, of why he wants to be paid in that 30 million range has to do with what he's done. And I think it's hard for an organization to sign a player who's going to age. Now, you look back at his health. He hasn't missed a game since 2021. He's done all the right things. We can list. I can spend an hour on this show talking about all the reasons why Terry McLaurin is the perfect commander. But for some reason, there's a philosophy here from the decision makers and perhaps maybe even ownership, because a lot of these big deals, you got to get the owner to sign off on this. So it makes me wonder of what kind of conversations are being had about what's the point where they're saying, okay, we're willing to give here. Because I do think the example you gave where you were 25 to 33, I think those are the extremes on both sides. I think there's been numbers closer to between those discussed. But I can just tell you that McLaurin's camp really wants that number to be in the 3, or at least that first number to be 3.
Right.
I just don't think that's going to be it. I hate to keep taking it out of Washington because I know you want me to tell you exactly what Adam Peters is thinking, and I don't know. But when I ask other general managers of, how would you have handled this? Most have said this should have just been done earlier. We're criticizing Jerry obviously all the time for the way he's handling the Micah situation, and other general managers around the league are waiting too long. This is one of those where I don't necessarily believe it needed to get done this late, or at least people believe that as well. So now here we are, where we're in the meat of the camp, right? Where everyone, the coaches and the game planners here are going to start getting worried that Terry McLaurin is not out there. And sometimes that pressure from the staff can change the way this thing turns out.
All right. So how do you think it ultimately gets resolved? What's your hunch on how it finishes here?
My hunch is Terry gives, which, you've seen him out there with his agent, Buddy Baker, and not only are they professionally, friends, but they're personally good friends. They have a great relationship, Terry and Buddy. And there appears to be an amazing loyalty that they have to one another. But I think at some point here, because I just have a hard time believing Terry wants to be anywhere else. And teams around the league don't think Terry wants to go anywhere. Yes, he asked for a trade. But Washington is not, they're not on the phone right now with the Houston Texans having a discussion of what that trade package would look like. Not from my knowledge. And by the way, I use the Houston Texans as just an example. I was trying to think of a team that could use a receiver. But so to me, it's this is all just games to get to what it's almost like when you're going through a bad breakup and you're doing all these things, well, let's just get to it. And I just think they have to get to that point where someone's going to have to give, and it's going to probably be Terry in this one.
Do you have a guess as to what he gives, what the number is when he ends up giving? Is it less than 30?
I made this horrible mistake on Dan Patrick during the offseason.
What did you do?
You had a guess. Oh, so bad. And I text him, or I text his producer. I'm like, I can't believe I just did that, because the guessing thing when you're a reporter, people think it's what you're saying. It drives me crazy. Right. So I think it was like before Aaron Rodgers.
Uh-huh.
And he's like, all right, let's just guess. And he prefaced it. He credit to Dan. He was like, just make a wild guess.
Well,
right
that's
now.
why I'm asking you. Just a hunch. Guess.
A hunch. I think it lands between 27 and 28.
Okay.
I think everyone gives a little. Terry doesn't get the 3, but look, that's another thing too. In terms of his value, the number I get around the league is that. So it doesn't. It actually makes sense that's what my instinct is that. But even before this got to this point, and I was trying to understand how other teams would value him if they were in Adam Peters' situation, most have said around that number. So I think that's how it goes. Are you guessing something different?
No, the one thing that has been obvious, or at least I think it's obvious, is the team has all of the leverage here because he's under contract. He's under contract, and as you talk about age plays into the way they may see a long-term deal. It's like, really, if we just pay him the final year of his deal, and then if we use the tag next year, that is less money the next 2 years, and we get to pay as we go rather than laying it all out up front and then into escrow, 50 to 60 million. And I think financially, it actually in many ways makes more sense for the team to just have him play. Terry's going to play. He can't not play. And then have the flexibility of the tag. And then in 2027, that's his age 32 season. They'll try to make a plan to replace him by then. I mean, you do agree they have all the leverage, right? The team?
I don't necessarily agree they have all the leverage. I think you can make some points that they need Terry. I know what you're saying, Terry could play, but maybe Terry doesn't. I don't think he's got the stomach for it, but he may choose not to do it. But who knows? You don't know what happens when it comes down to it. But the point that someone that I was talking to close to the Commanders was talking to me about, we were just discussing just the culture that's being built there, and we weren't talking specific to Terry. And obviously, Terry's a big reason why things are so good, and not only just because of the production, but everything he does off the field in the meeting rooms and the way he's so beloved by everybody. But this contract situation has the eyes of every agent and every other player of how are they going to handle this? How are they going to treat the good guy? How are they going to treat the guy who's not only good as a character, but good, as a player? This is the prime example. This is the Dan Quinn guy in terms of how he wants his players to be. So I think there's some of that in play here in terms of leverage, right? Where this is where Terry can have a little bit of hey, I'm the example of doing it the right way. So pay me for that reason. Whereas, Washington's coming the other way. We're not paying you for what you've done, buddy, because that just doesn't work like that in the NFL.
Right.
So we'll see how this goes. But I don't get the sense that they're going to trade him for real, or that this isn't going to work out. It's who's going to have the stomach for this in the next week or two to just go, all right, I give,
Right. Look, I've said all along, there is some emotional leverage that Terry has, and that kind of speaks, you kind of just spoke to that to a certain degree. There's a little bit of risk that the team takes by not treating the good guy, in a way that everybody around the league says, yeah, that's how you should treat a Terry McLaurin. I have a feeling if it was 28-year-old good guy Terry, it would be done.
Oh my goodness, this thing is done. Look, Terry, yeah. I know what it's like. It stinks to get old in general. So when I was watching them practice in New England, I was up there in Foxborough. I was talking to some people on the Patriots staff. I'm like, I just love picking the brains of people watching it who know what the heck they're doing. And, one guy said to me, they sure miss Terry. Just as we're walking off, I'm like, yep, don't say that too loud in front of Washington. They don't want to hear it, but it was pretty apparent, and I'm sure you saw the reporting on it as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think that they also have this sense that Jaden can elevate everything around him. They have a true elite quarterback. In fact, that's on my list of questions for you. Who's a better quarterback in the NFC than Jaden Daniels heading into 2025?
I sure as I can think of one. In terms of just the presence, the understanding, the comprehension, everything you hear about him, he is a star. And in being around him, you feel it. But, if we were to rip through, obviously I'm always going to show tremendous amount of respect to Matthew Stafford. Of what he's been able to do, what he does. I'll take Matthew Stafford. Obviously, he's somebody dealing with back issues, something he's been dealing with for a really long time. I'm curious to see how this is going to play. They've got Jimmy Garoppolo in LA as a backup. Sean McVay appears to love the guy, so we'll see that. But, Jared Goff had a good season or two. I wouldn't put him above Jaden, no way. Look, probably the sexiest debate I could have right now, if we want to do it, is Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts just won a Super Bowl.
Yep.
Is Jalen Hurts better than Jaden Daniels? And I think you're going to get a lot of different opinions, but I think most are going to say if you continue to give Hurts the roster that he has in Philly, he's going to keep having that success. I just don't know if he has that same kind of success if you put him on the Cowboys, if you put him on the Titans. I'm just thinking of random teams that have some holes. So yeah, I don't think you're a lunatic for saying that Jaden Daniels is the best quarterback in the NFC. I'm with you.
How does the Micah Parsons thing end?
Man, you talk about emotions. This thing is wild. And look, it comes with the Cowboys. Like anything Dallas is insane. So I guess it was 2 weeks ago now when it just a little over where it started, and I started to hear rumblings about this, that he had in his draft, in his Twitter, this letter that he wrote that his agent helped him with to basically say, I'm done. I want to trade. I want out. I never want to be a Dallas Cowboy again. And it was watered down a bit once it came out. It wasn't as sharp as I was expecting it to be. But the fact that there was confusion over what this 1.5 to 2 day conversation was about his contract is really poking a lot of different people different ways, part of the organization and with Micah Parsons people. Obviously, you've heard and seen his agent, David Mulugeta, who's one of the biggest agents in football.
Yep.
And so where we're at right now is until they have a conversation, until the agent and Jerry Jones talk, because no one else is allowed to talk about this deal in that building. It's only Jerry. It's a Jerry show. By the way, on other contracts, there have been other people allowed to do the deals, right? Jerry's always got his eye on and he's mentioning things, but he doesn't do every single deal in Dallas. This one, if you call their front office right now, let's say Mulugeta, you're transferred to Jerry's office. They don't even have a conversation with him. I'm not saying Jerry picks up because he doesn't. So until they have a conversation, it's not going to get worked out. And every day that goes by, you have to wonder because this is starting to feel very personal. Now I say that, and I had a conversation with the GM this morning about the situation because everyone's so nosy. And he said, oh, it's going to work out. They're going to pay him, and it's just going to be so over the market. It's going to be obnoxious, and they'll get it done before week one, and this
Right.
is one big waste of the summer. But I guess it's something we need to talk about because what else are we talking about when it comes to the Dallas Cowboys if we're not talking about this?
Yeah. Well, I mean, and I opened up the show with just trying to answer and calm people down about Washington's 30-point loss in a preseason game in which 30...
why is everyone flipping out? I see it on Twitter. I'm surprised. No, I'm not surprised, but relax.
Yeah, it's silly.
Yeah,
it's silly season.
So silly.
But what you were just talking about, that stuff matters. Injuries matter. Contract negotiations matter. And I think the Cowboys thing, it sounds like that's what'll happen. It'll get done like the Sunday morning, or they play Thursday night against the Eagles, and it'll happen like that Wednesday afternoon before the opener, which is crazy.
Exactly. It'd be during the national anthem. It'll break, and we'll be like, oh, So told you.
Diana Russini, the Athletic, reporting that as the national anthem's going on, that Micah Parsons just signed a contract extension, 4 years, whatever the millions it would be. What
$55 million a year? Like something,
$55 million.
Some overpriced.
Yeah.
By the way, if it's 55. Yeah. I called something on the show once because people still stop me about it, and I always say I guessed, but they viewed it through like I was reporting it. But we played the game that you and I always play together. Like, right. What do you think? How do you play? And you know what it was? I think it was ownership. I think it was Commanders ownership. Mm-hmm. Who was going to buy them?
Right.
And I said that at the time, Josh Harris and blah, 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 whatever I said. And people were like, man, she's the best. She knows.
She nailed it.
If it turns out to, if this turns out to be 55, call me the second it comes out, whether it's me breaking or someone else. I will hop on the show immediately, and we can laugh about it.
You know what? That happens all the time. Sometimes you really are. You just throw something out there. You got to take credit for those, though. No, but you did the right thing. That's self-awareness, Diana, to make fun of yourself accidentally, backing into one with Josh Harris. All right, last question. This time of year, we know there's going to be a team that we think right now isn't going to be good that will be good. Last year, Washington went from 4-13 to 12-5. Do you have a guess as to the big turnaround team in 2025?
The New England Patriots, and it has everything to do with their quarterback. Let me preface this with, I think 1A is their head coach Mike Vrabel. I think 1B is Drake May. We can debate what's more important, but the fact that something is building there that is not like what it was when Tom Brady was there, but has that same quality of discipline, detail-oriented. This team is a little bit more gritty, a little bit more Titan-esque, obviously because of their coach. But it's like a Titan team with a quarterback that's good. And I can see on the sidelines when I've been around them, just watching growth and seeing it's working. Sometimes a lot of head coaches come in and it's interesting to watch how their philosophies are digested and how it shows itself in practice and on the field. And I've seen little things already where I'm like, wow, they're bought in. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, it's a former coach of the year that's in charge. He's got tons of familiarity and insight and just a lunatic when it comes to game management and ways to take advantage of bad football. That's kind of the phrase they like to use around New England now. Like, how can we take advantage of bad football instead of trying to figure out how to be so great individually? So to me, they're going to be the team I think that makes a little splash. Also, by the way, let's also keep in mind it was so bad last year, right? It was just such a disaster. So I'm interested to see them. I'm interested to see the Houston Texans take a step. I don't know what happened last year. I don't know why CJ struggled the way he did. But that's the growth I'm most interested in. But other than that, those are the two teams that really stick out.
Thanks for doing this as always. Hope you're well.
This is great. I'll see you this season. All right.
Yep.
Bye.
Diana Russini, everybody from The Athletic, at DM Russini on X on Twitter. She's also got a podcast with Chase Daniel called Scoop City. So you can get that podcast wherever you get podcasts. All right, Ben's coming up at 12. They've got an intra-squad scrimmage going on out in Ashburn, so we'll get an update from him. Jaden landed in a tier 2 in rankings of quarterbacks. I'll tell you where and why and what people around the league say about him. Next, Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. All right, Ben's going to go a little earlier with us today. He can't do 12. The intra-squad scrimmage, I guess, has concluded. Ben joins us now. Ben, of course, at Ben Standig. Ben writes a Substack column now as a reporter covering this team, and he's got a podcast called Last Man Standing. So before we get to what happened today and any observations, Terry McLaurin was there today and was talking to Adam Peters. Is this the big indication of the day that things maybe are progressing?
I don't know. I guess we'd all like to think that, just to, end the saga and get him back on the field. But I don't know. I mean, Terry's been around. For all we know, they were talking about, Terry getting married and Adam's family, or who knows. I mean, I don't know. Clearly, you would like to think that there's some progress. I mean, one good result of the hold-in is exactly this, that he's there, he's face-to-face with all these people, and, maybe that smooths out some of the rough edges. But at the moment, prior to that conversation, I had no real sense from what I was being told that there was any real progress. So I'm not going to say that conversation means there is, but, certainly better that than, them standing, 10 feet away, arms folded, not looking at each other, that type of deal.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, it seems like, Dan Quinn especially has sort of played that good cop, bad cop, scenario with him being the coach and not involved in any of these negotiations. That's for the front office. That's for AP and Lance Newmark, LN, and all the other abbreviations, initials in the front office. We've seen him and Quinn together. We've seen him and players together, but I think this is the first time we've seen Terry and Adam together, correct?
I believe that's correct. Yes, we've seen Terry hug the owner.
Yeah, right.
But I don't know that we saw him with Adam. I mean, typically Terry, for the most part, has been coming out after practices when we're out there. Today, he was out there for at least for the start of the scrimmage. So yeah, I don't know that we've seen that before, but obviously I'm sure in the building they're running into each other, as it were. So yeah, I don't imagine that was like their first face-to-face conversation since Terry's been back.
Right. Well, I mean, it's good that he's there. He's not getting fined. I think that's true. I believe that's true. And I think he was hurt, and I think he probably still is to a certain degree. And sometimes that can really foster resentment, but it doesn't seem to be the case with him. Hopefully it's not. All right. What do we got from today? What did we have? What went on? Give us your observations from this intra-squad scrimmage that Dan Quinn held.
Yeah. So, I mean, basically the Burgundy team had the first team offense. The gold team had the first team defense, and then you kind of went from there. There was a scoreboard, so I'll say the gold team won 14-0. Sam Hartman had two drives where they ended up with touchdowns. He ran one in, and another one he pitched to Chris Rodriguez. The larger point that would be on the Burgundy side with Jaden Daniels, the quarterback. Again, it is what it is, but like they looked uncomfortable out there today. The defensive line or the pass rushers were getting in a bunch. Frankie Luvu had 2 sacks. Dorrance Armstrong had 1. Bobby Wagner was providing pressure up the middle. And Jaden was either having to hurry his throw and not always having room to step because there was pressure coming up the middle. And then when he did throw, it was often going underneath. I think that's a combination of, one, guys like Ertz and Eckler. That's kind of where they're going to run patterns, but also, as we've been discussing, the outside receivers just were not exactly getting open. So, there was one play where Deebo Samuel ran a go route on the outside. He was open, and Jaden threw it to him, but Wagner came up the middle. There was really no room for Jaden to step, so he probably had to hurry the throw, and he ends up overthrowing Deebo. So the offense really just never got going. I mean, credit to the defense and that type of thing, but the offense just looked, again, like I said, kind of uncomfortable today. And, again, the combination of the receivers not being out there, the offensive line is missing, both starting guards or projected starting guards. So all that factored into the kind of a one-sided affair with the side with the first defense winning.
So, where are you on the side of the joint practice and the preseason game really helped out Terry McLaurin?
Yeah, I was just talking about that with somebody. I don't really think that matters. I mean, I think it does to us, right? I mean, we can clearly see it. The offense is just simply not as good without this one guy in particular. Again, they're also missing Noah Brown. I'm not saying if Noah Brown was out there, they'd be fine and they wouldn't have to worry about it, but he's also not out there. So I don't think Washington's going to change its tune, whatever stance they're in, because of the fact that the other receivers don't appear to be stepping up. So I don't believe in that. But that said, it doesn't hurt. I mean, it's not like, at some point I could see, maybe somebody on the coaching staff kind of being like, hey, well, what are we doing here? We can't do what we want to do if he's not out there. As good as 5 is, and Jaden obviously is very, very, very good. You still need to, he still has to get, guys have to get open. Guys have to be able to make plays down the field, and we just haven't seen enough of that. So I don't really think it matters in the negotiating room, but, psychologically, it's definitely not hurting him.
I mean, before the joint practice in the game, you had suggested that Debo was having a great camp. He didn't play in the game. So on Friday night, 30 others didn't either. Starters.
Right. I mean, Debo, like when I'm talking about the receivers generally, he's a slot guy, right? As is Jalen Lane. Jalen Lane's been a little quieter the last few days, I would say, but by and large, Debo's had every day he makes a big play or two. I don't know if he really did today, but again, that wasn't really on him. He was wide open on the one pass, and but both of those guys play the slot primarily, and that's the rub. Like today, they started with like a 2-receiver set. It was Debo and Luke McCaffrey. They then later added a third receiver, and I want to say that was KJ Osborne, right? And like it's not like they were holding anybody back. Like this is just what they have right now, and that's again, you and I talked about this. I totally agree that when you have a quarterback like Jaden Daniels, he can raise the level of everybody around him 100%. But the level has to also be pretty solid, and it's just hard to argue right now that the group they have on the outside is solid enough for Jaden to raise the floor. But again, you're missing. Obviously, Cosby's going to be out for a while, but Brandon Coleman is out. Noah Brown's out. It's not just Terry, but obviously that's the big one.
Yeah, and you haven't game planned for any of this
Absolutely.
stuff yet.
100%.
And I mean, I think you asked Quinn the question about why of the 14 players that they brought in Sunday to work out, 3 of whom they signed yesterday, why they didn't bring in any wide receivers. So, I mean, it could be that there just aren't any out there to bring in that are better than the ones they have. It also could be that they're not as concerned as maybe some fans and media members are.
Well, I definitely agree that I don't think there's a big pool of guys out there. Like the higher names are like Amari Cooper and Gabe Davis. I'm sure those guys want to get paid as much as they can, and Washington is not looking to dole out too much money at this point because if everybody's healthy, they're fine. And then secondly, I'm sure they want to have real chances at starting jobs. And if Terry is back with Noah Brown, that becomes less. So forget those guys. After that, it really is not much different than what's already here. I think there's an opportunity for like Ja'Cory Brooks and Tay Martin and some of the other younger guys who normally be like, all right, interesting, but probably not ready for prime time. There is an opportunity for some of those guys to make a claim and get out there. I also think like the running back room has really stood out. I mean, even today, like if you made me name an MVP for the scrimmage, I'd probably go with Demetric Felton, who's one of the running backs we really don't talk about a lot. He was very effective as a runner and catching some short passes and turning them into gains. Again, no tackling out here, so take that for what it's worth. But like he's a guy who, under other years, we might be saying, hey, he could make this team as the 4th running back, and here, it's pretty hard to make that claim. So the running back room is good enough where if they went crazy, you told me they kept 5 with like a Kaz Allen being maybe a swing guy. I'm not saying they will because it doesn't make practical sense.
They kept 3 last year.
Right. I'm just saying, like, if you're looking at it from, like, where are their best playmakers? They have more playmakers right now at running back than they do receiver, is all I'm saying. So they won't do that because that's just a little bit weird. But, hey, if they're willing to line up Austin Eckler outside more than, at receiver to a degree, or in the slot as opposed to out of the backfield, maybe that's a workaround. But, again, this is getting I'm getting into the nerdy weeds here of really the worst case scenarios. But, right now for me, receiver, it's getting hard to figure out who the couple last spots might go to.
Right. But on opening day, it'll probably be Terry McLaurin, Deebo Samuel, and Noah Brown as the top three when they actually play a game that counts.
Yeah, I would say
the good
that,
news.
I would say for right now, for me, that this is not about so much Terry. This is about Noah Brown health insurance. Because if he's going to, you can't rely on him to stay healthy, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. So what happens if he misses time? That to me is where I'm like, okay, I don't know who would be that person right now.
Jalen Jerry Rice Lane could be the guy.
Right. Well,
he could easily be the guy, right? Actually, in all seriousness, as much as we can evaluate players like they are doing, which we can't like they are doing, I actually thought 16 was a player among maybe 3 or 4 that stood out in a positive way from Friday night. Ja'Cory Brooks.
Yeah, I mean, he's just, of course, going up against the other team's deep backups, and that's how that goes. But, look, there's promise. I mean, he was, when they signed the UDFA class, he was the number one guy I said to look out for. Yeah, he's just inconsistent. I mean, that's and it's to be expected. I mean, look, he went undrafted for a reason, even though he played with, Tyler Shook, who got drafted fairly high this year and had over 1,000-yard season, was a former Alabama 5-star recruit. There's a lot to like. It just hasn't put it all together. I think he's promising. I honestly would probably rather keep him as like the 6th receiver than say one of these older guys who I just don't think there's much upside with. But that's different than like he's going to be the guy to jump in and play if he has to. I don't think he's there either. So right now, so that's the rub. But again, the when final cuts happen around the league, this is where they found Noah Brown a year ago. It's possible they get lucky again and find somebody that could step in and help. But it's at the moment, it kind of feels like that's what they would have to do if Noah Brown were to miss, regular season games.
All right. Where are the injuries right now? Cosme's projected return. I saw that Merritt was banged up the other night in the blue tent and didn't participate today in the scrimmage. There are a few others as well. Tunsil was banged up the other day. Anything of concern beyond Cosme's return date and maybe Noah Brown?
Well, Mariota was at least out there today a little bit. He didn't do the scrimmage, but he was at least out there.
What is his injury?
It's like a lower leg strain, according to Quinn told at some point. It doesn't seem like it's a big deal, but, they're obviously just trying to nurse him through all of this. The Brandon Coleman thing, like I saw him out there today, didn't have any kind of brace on. So, I guess they just don't feel like he's ready to get put out of the field, or they don't want to risk. We don't know the exact situation there, other than we saw him like hobble off the field at a practice a week or so ago. Javonte Jean-Baptiste has been out for a while now. He's the one of the young defensive ends that trying to get in there and be like the be a 6th defensive end to make the team. Jordan McGee, again, we don't know the exact nature of the injury, but he's been out for a while. He was injured last year. The fact that they made the moves they made yesterday, bringing in a veteran guy in Duke Riley, I think it's a combination of they weren't happy with the young guys they had, but at the same time, or all the young guys they had, but at the same time, it said to me, hey, if something does happen, we don't really, we need something more than this to fill in. It's something if Bobby Wagner were to, miss plays or time or whatever. And Riley is a vet that can do that. So, McGee is the situation where I'm sure it's got to be getting frustrating for all involved because they really want to use him, but he's got to be on the field.
They did release their first draft choice, this group anyway. Dominique Hampton was released yesterday, 5th rounder. I had a friend of mine say that's really a good sign that they're not afraid to release their draft choices. He's a 5th rounder. 5th rounders make it, but more times than not, they don't. But what was his story, essentially?
Well, look, he didn't play last year. He played in one game. He played in the Dallas game at the end of the year, and I think that was when, they had some guys sitting out. So he just didn't play. And you're like, okay, he's converting from safety to linebacker. They were fortunate that they were, Jordan McGee was out, but they had, Michael Walker was a guy that was a backup for them at some of those spots. So, they were covered without him, but he's still a guy who's, a project. Then they draft Kane Medrano, not saying that they're exact same player, but there's a similarity with that sort of hybrid linebacker safety role. Medrano has flashed more. And I didn't go back and watch the all 22 of the preseason game, but it looked like
that you didn't do that.
But Hampton looked like he struggled significantly from what I could see, off TV. He also had like a 15-yard face mask. And for them to decide we're going to move on from him, I mean, they still have multiple undrafted free agents at linebacker, and they kept those guys over him. So clearly they weren't happy. And Dan Quinn said, hey, if it's not going to work, let us, cut bait, let him find another spot if he can, and enjoy his time here. But, we got to move on.
Talking to Ben Standig, is it fair to say that Matt Gay through camp and then obviously the other night has been inconsistent?
Yeah, I haven't. I don't know that anybody has tracked like every single kick he's attempted to know what the percentage is. Has he missed a few from distance? Yeah, I think that's fair. He's also made a bunch. You can see the strength of the leg. I feel like he's been fairly consistent inside of like 45, although he did miss one, I want to say yesterday, that looked to be, someone you would expect a kicker to make. But yeah, look, I think he's been inconsistent. Like, he's really not, this isn't like watching like prime, Justin Tucker or Mark Mosley or somebody where just banging every kick and it's all good. It's definitely not that. Is it a step up from last year? I think it's a step up in terms of the leg strength. It gives you confidence that you can, take a shot on longer kicks, but obviously you got to make them for this to matter. And, I think he's been a little off for sure, but I wouldn't,
enough for them to bring in another kicker before opening day to give a look-see maybe in the final preseason game or not?
I mean, if he continues, if they play against the Bengals and he misses a couple of kicks, then sure, you have to at some point. I mean, Dan Quinn, when he was asked the other day about bringing in competition, he didn't shoot it down particularly. He said, hey, it's a fair question, but we're not there right now. So obviously it's not ideal, but, they want to see it out because I think from a talent standpoint, he's going to give you more than, like Zane Gonzalez and, some of the guys they had last year because they just don't have the leg strength. They're Austin Seibert as well. So I think that's the thing. From a talent standpoint, he's better than the guys that are out there. But obviously you got to make them and you got to feel confident in the kicker if you're going to throw him out there in big situations.
All right. So back to, real quickly, on Monday night, we're now 6 days away. We got a ways to go. But are you expecting the starters to play at least a couple series against the Bengals?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Dan Quinn hasn't said that officially or anything, but like so tomorrow they have a day off. And then when they come back Thursday, they're going to treat Thursday, Friday, Saturday like it's a normal Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for a Sunday game. So they're getting into the rhythm of what a regular game schedule is like. And I think that's in part, because the starters are going to get out there and do their thing. So yeah, I would be stunned if we see Jaden Daniels for more than 2 series and maybe more than one, and maybe not more than one, depending on how well they do on the one drive. So yeah, I think they've got to get out there. I mean, look, at some point, as former football players that we know who watch these things, they're like, the only way to get good at football is to play football. So at some point they have to get out there and actually, get after it.
All right. Last one, circling back to the Adam Peters, Terry McLaurin conversation today out at training camp. We think this is the first time they've been seen publicly talking. Serious question. I mean, let's give concrete thoughts on this. Good sign or not a sign of anything?
I'm going to go not a sign of anything other than to say the fact that they are talking and seem to be, having a reasonable chat is like, it doesn't look like animosity is there. And that's been the thing I've been saying all along about Terry. Like, even when he gave that, 30-minute, had that 30-minute conversation with us at Eastern Motors a few weeks ago when he initially said, hey, I'm not happy with this, before and after that, he was a totally, normal Terry McLaurin, smiley, happy, how's it going, whatever. It wasn't like he was like just straight up bitter. And that's been the sense I've had even when he's been back here in the building. You see him with the fans. Like, I don't get the sense that he is just like an angry guy or anything. But obviously he believes he's worth X amount of money at over X amount of years and feels that he's owed that respect. Respect should be coming his way, and he doesn't feel the team is doing that. But I don't get the sense that it's crazy hot, and that's why seeing them, I think, that sort of for me continued with that theme. But I don't know that means he's any closer to actually getting the deal done.
Did either one of them seek out the other, or did they just happen to be in the same general area? Do you have any idea how they ended up next to each other talking?
I don't. I just saw I was at the other end of the field when it happened, so I just saw the footage. I think NBC4 had a clip of them talking. So no, I don't know. Like when he hugged Harris, I saw that one unfold where Terry was walking out and the owner happened to be there. This one, I have no idea.
Okay. Thanks. Appreciate it. Go do what you need to do. I'll talk to you later.
Awesome, man. See you.
All right, Ben Standig, everybody. I'm watching this video that JP put out. I'll retweet it real quickly if you want to see it. I think it's a good sign. I think that there has been hurt and some resentment from Terry's side. And he's been clearly publicly when he's been at training camp, he's been Terry McLaurin, and he's gone over and above with fans, etc. The hug with Josh Harris. I think there was a get-together with Dan Quinn from very early on. But this is with the person that is negotiating with his agent more than anybody else. And they seem to be having a cordial conversation. Who knows? Max was going to attempt to read lips, but I actually think this is a decent sign. I think if there's real hurt, real animosity, real contention, it's hard. It's all business, but sometimes, especially with the player and the player's agent, it can become personal, especially when you feel like you're being undervalued and underappreciated, which is essentially what he said during that 35-minute press conference after the Eastern Motors spot. All right. Jaden Daniels is on a list, the annual athletic list, which, by the way, is actually a survey of people in the league. I'll tell you where he ended up on that list when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right, here is what's happening. The Washington Commanders Burgundy and Gold Inter-Squad Scrimmage has wrapped up today out in Ashburn. Cliff Kingsbury and Joe Witt were the head coaches of their respective teams, with assistant coaches calling plays. Players that sat out today were wide receiver Noah Brown, Terry McLaurin, Marcus Mariota, Sam Cosmi, Brandon Coleman, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Jordan McGee, Bobby Price, and Jonathan Jones. Plus, Barstool Sports employee and former NFL head coach John Gruden has won his case against the NFL in Nevada Supreme Court. Gruden accused the NFL of leaking damaging emails in the year of 2021 before resigning from his head coaching job with the Raiders. The NFL will likely appeal the decision all the way up to the Supreme Court. And the Nats, they fall 7-4 to the Kansas City Royals last night after Jackson Rutledge gave up multiple two-run bombs in the sixth inning that seemed to be all she wrote for the ball club last night. They'll reset today and look to get one back versus Kansas City. First pitch at 7:40. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 7:10. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1 and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
The Athletics' Mike Sando has been putting out quarterback rankings for a few years now. They are an evaluation of the quarterbacks in the league by key front office execs. All right. And here are the people that he is using in this year's breakdown of all of the quarterbacks in the league, putting them into tiers, 5 tiers. I'll explain what those are in a moment. But there are 50 voters who were granted anonymity to share their very candid evaluations. 6 general managers, 6 assistant GMs, 6 former GMs, 5 other executives, 8 head coaches, 19 other coaches, including 15 coordinators. Each voter placed 34 veteran quarterbacks into 5 tiers. From best tier 1 to worst tier 5. Quarterbacks were then ranked by average vote and placed into tiers based on vote distribution. The survey does not include rookies because voters have not seen them play in the NFL. You should wait until we see them play in the NFL. So, tier 1, they actually have 5 quarterbacks in tier 1, and they describe tier 1. A quarterback can carry his team each week. The team wins because of him. He expertly handles pure passing situations. He has no real holes in his game. Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow tied for number 1 overall among the tier 1 quarterbacks, in which there are 5. All right, so Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow tied for the best quarterback in the NFL. Josh Allen follows Burrow and Mahomes at 3. Then it's Lamar Jackson. And then it's Matt Stafford rounding out tier 1. About Stafford, here's some quotes. All right. One voter said, I always had a high admiration for him as a competitor, arm talent, and playmaker, but always thought he was just a gunslinger. He still has that in him, but his mind, his ability to process, think, and communicate stand out. Matt Stafford ranked ahead of the quarterbacks who landed in tier 2. Those quarterbacks were led by the sixth best quarterback in the NFL, the first quarterback in the second tier, a tier described as quarterbacks that can carry their team sometimes, but not consistently. He can handle pure passing situations in doses and or possesses other dimensions that are special enough to elevate him above tier 3. He has a hole or 2 in his game. In tier 2, there are 9 quarterbacks listed in tier 2. So the tier 1 quarterbacks and the tier 2 quarterbacks get you through the top 14 in the league. The number 1 tier 2 quarterback coming in at number 6 overall in the league is Jaden Daniels. No second-year quarterback has made a higher tier debut than Daniels. His average and his 17 top-tier votes breaks the records of C.J. Stroud last year and Justin Herbert in 2021. Here are some of the quotes about Jaden Daniels. This from a defensive coordinator. Quote, what I respect most is it never seems too big for him. He would stand in the pocket and deliver the ball. Once we saw him running around, it was, okay, he's going to be a problem, closed quote. Another defensive coordinator, quote, he's a tier 2 with the arrow pointing up. He can run, he can throw with accuracy, and he's really calm. The SH ain't too big for him, and it's easy to see when you are playing him. He just doesn't get flustered, closed quote. Here's another quote. This is from an NFC East rival. I don't know if it's a GM, former GM, coach, etc. Quote, he is probably the best passer in our division. He's really good. By the way, Daniels got 13 more Tier 1 votes than the rest of the NFC East combined. Hurts got 3, Prescott got 1 in terms of Tier 1 votes. This from another defensive coordinator. This dude's got an arm, legs, and processing. He just took his team to the championship game with a non-championship caliber roster. Yeah, I think that's an important point to emphasize when we talk about his rookie season now and in the future. Is of the 6, I think it's now 6 quarterbacks who quarterback teams in their rookie seasons to at least the championship game. No quarterbacks ever quarterbacked a team to the Super Bowl. He was the only one out of the 6, Roethlisberger, Flacco, Sean King, Brock Purdy, and I'm forgetting one. Sanchez. None of those quarterbacks were the reason why their teams got to the NFC Championship. They weren't even in the top 3. They had great defenses. They had great supporting casts. Jaden Daniels led a team with the 23rd ranked overall DVOA defense, 26th against the run, to the championship game with average around him offensively, with the exception of Terry. Ertz was outstanding, but it was him. He was the reason they made it to the championship game more than anything else. That was the first time that ever happened. And then, there's a paragraph written by Mike Sando. He writes, can Daniels sustain it? Stroud regressed after a stellar rookie season. Also, opponents seemed to figure out Washington offensive coordinator Cliff Kingsbury when he was in Arizona, where another dual threat quarterback, Murray, failed to sustain early process. Again, we've been through the whole figuring out Cliff Kingsbury narrative. It wasn't true before last year, and after last year, it's not true. Of course, it helps when you have greatness at quarterback. But there's one more quote that this particular paragraph leads into. It is from a head coach in the league. Quote, I think he is tremendous. I don't want to one him, meaning tier 1 him, because I want to see another year. Get me halfway through that second year, and I'll have a good feel. The defensive coordinators will all have had their shot. Yeah, I mean, look, at this point, it doesn't really matter. I think we know what he is, which is great. Is he Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Jackson? I think he's Stafford. I love Stafford. I think Stafford deserves consideration for that higher level of tier 2, but I think Jaden should be in tier 1 on this list. That's my personal opinion. He got 17 tier 1 votes, and he got 31 tier 2 votes. But man, the league loves Stafford. That was one of the things from this survey that, we've seen this before with Stafford, but people in the league, and this goes back to Detroit, they love Matt Stafford. They think he is really good and has been for a long time. Remember, Washington was in the mix. I mean, they actually offered more than the Rams offered Detroit, but there was that, he was getting back to, he was going to LA. He wanted to be with Sean, etc. So Washington missed out on that deal, and Washington didn't have a Jared Goff to send back. What's funny about that trade is I think in the moment we're like, Detroit, I mean, they're getting some picks, but, Jared Goff is just a contract that they can move on from after a year. But they haven't, and Jared Goff's played at a very high level. But Matt Stafford, I always find it interesting when you have these kinds of surveys and polls where it's people in the league and it's general managers in the league speaking on the condition of anonymity. It's coaches. They know clearly what what is elite and what isn't elite. And Stafford has been a quarterback that they have loved for years. By the way, after Jaden at 6, Justin Herbert's at 7, Jared Goff is at 8, and then tied for 9th is C.J. Stroud, C.J. Stroud, and Jalen Hurts. So that's your top 10 according to the rest of the league. And I'm actually interested to see what they say about Jalen Hurts, because I think he's always the most controversial on these lists. Like, where is he? He's a Super Bowl winning quarterback now. He's played well in the biggest of games. And yet, I don't think anybody would take him ahead of Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, Jackson, Stafford, Daniels, Herbert. Stroud even maybe. I don't know. Here's some things about Jalen Hurts from an offensive coordinator. Jalen does everything the right way for how they have been built. I see him as a really good player on a team with a bunch of really good players. Another head coach. He has improved from the pocket, but when you play him, you still want him to beat you from there. If he can get out of the pocket in 2 minutes, he is effective as hell, and he has done it. But he has to do it with his legs in crunch time. The guys you want can do it with arm and legs in crunch time. Another GM said, this is going to sound like I don't like him, but I do. Just by the definition, I feel he's more of a tier 3 quarterback. Am I on an island with that? 12 of the voters had him in tier 3, 35 had him in tier 2, and 3 had him in tier 1. Another GM said, Hurts is always a tough one for me. I think he is a tier 3 quarterback. They are very talented around him, and he's not as consistent as a passer. They have a strong defense, great playmakers, great offensive line. He is able to function that way, but I don't know that he is the one that elevates them. That is not a slight. Yeah. Interesting. Jalen Hurts is a tough evaluation. That's a tough one. By the way, Baker Mayfield was at 11. Jordan Love, Prescott at 12, Jordan Love 13, Brock Purdy 14. Those are your tier 2 guys. Anyway, Jaden comes in at the top of tier 2. Who cares, really? I do always find it interesting. I think a lot of why he's not overwhelmingly a tier 1 at this point is just about it's one season. Like we did, a month ago or whatever, when we said, have we crowned him too early? I think it's a natural thing to say, man, I don't really see much of anything in terms of flaws, but I can't go there yet after one season. By the way, one voter voted for him in tier 4, and one voter voted for him in tier 3. But the tier 4 description is an unproven player, not enough information for voters to classify, or a veteran who ideally would not start all 17 games. So clearly that one voter that put him at 14 considers him to be not enough information to classify, basically. So there you go. Jaden is where he is. All right, when we come back, Dan Quinn spoke before practice today. He said something about Joe Witt Jr., his defensive coordinator, that I want you to hear. We'll get to that when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. All right. I may have given you the wrong order. But we'll just stand by for the numbers I give you. You ready?
I got you.
Okay. Dan Quinn spoke today before the intra-squad scrimmage that he set up for today. I think the reason that they did that is long, layoff between Friday night and then next Monday night. Typically you'll get a preseason game Friday or Saturday, another one Friday or Saturday, another one Thursday or Friday, done. They went Friday and then not again until the following Monday. Too bad it's not the regular season. They'd have a net rest advantage, more likely than not, going into their game with Cincinnati, although I forget when Cincinnati played the other night. But he talked before this intra-squad scrimmage today, and there were a couple of things that stood out to me that I wanted to play for you. The first one is just on Joe Witt Jr. He's asked about the traits of Joe Witt Jr. That maybe he can see in a future head coach. Here's what he said.
One thing from head coaching, like very clear on expectations, very clear on, identity and how to do things. And he's like very organized, very detailed. So those are big parts of the job, when you're putting the whole group together, and identity and standards and, no gray about how you want to do things. And so for Joe, growing up as a coach's kid, dad, linebacker coach for years, is tough as hell. And so he's very clear on standards and expectations. And I think that carries over to your team because, although the players, their roles may be different, the standards and the expectations of how you do things are the same.
Last week we played a soundbite from Joe Witt Jr. He was asked about last year, kind of what went wrong, and he actually was very reflective on his role in what happened last year. And he talked about some of the changes that he had made, and essentially netting it out, he was going to be less of a micromanager and more of a macro manager. He was going to let his coaches do, their jobs. He wasn't going to have the answers to every question that he asked or others asked. Look, he had never been a defensive coordinator. He had never been the top dog of an entire side of the ball. There's a whole, when you're that guy or you're the head coach, there's a lot more sort of management responsibility that comes with that position. You've got coordinators. You've got position coaches basically reporting to you. So it's a different role. And, with guys that are talented and guys that, as Quinn suggested, have ability, organized, detailed, very clear, on things. He's a very good communicator. That's for sure. It can take a little bit of time. And maybe part of last year was him, learning, which is okay, as long as you're learning from that experience. It'll be interesting to watch him this year, because I do think there's some pressure on Joe Witt Jr. If they were to have another terrible season defensively, and let's just say that they're just as bad against the run, bottom 5, 6, 7 teams against the run, bottom third of the league, bottom quarter of the league in advanced stat defense, not, yards, etc. Without, by the way, let's just say the benefit of a high takeaway rate, because a lot of times you can put up with a defense that is not super strong against the run, maybe not the best pass rushing unit, but for some reason ends up in the top 3 or 4 teams in takeaways, because that is the most important defensive stat. How many times are you taking the ball away, ending a drive, creating points yourself, or certainly setting up the opportunity for your offense to score points? But if you have another, so-so season takeaway wise, and then, a borderline bad season everywhere else, I think an off-season question, especially if they were to flame out, let's just say in the postseason or not even make the postseason, Joe Witt Jr. will be a major topic. Now, whether or not that will be the topic out there, I don't know, because context is everything. It's very possible that it's the players that aren't very good. But that was the one thing that always, for me last year, just didn't connect. I thought they did have some decent players. I mean, Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner were second-team All-Pros. Not Pro Bowlers, second-team Associated Press All-Pro linebackers. Mikey Sanderstill turned out to be a really good player as a rookie last year. Quan Martin came on at the end of the year, played very well. Jeremy Chin, I think, had a good season. Dante Fowler Jr. obviously had 10.5 sacks. And I always thought that the performance, the results, didn't necessarily match the players that were out there. I'm not saying that they had great talent, but they had some individuals that had very good seasons, but the defense wasn't very good. So you always have to consider, well, what else was the issue here? Was it injuries? No, not really. Was it coaching? But it certainly sounds like Dan Quinn has a lot of faith in the guy that he brought with him from Dallas. He had experience with him. This was not hiring somebody based on recommendations, but he had never worked with him. He had worked with Joe Witt in Dallas. They were very familiar with each other, and Joe Witt very familiar with Dan Quinn's defense. So, yeah, I thought that was interesting to hear him with lofty praise of Joe Witt Jr.'s overall kind of coaching strengths, organized, detailed, very clear on standards, expectations. What wasn't necessarily laid out was, what about X's and O's? And he laid that out last week when he said he's got to let his coaches sort of coach a little bit more than he did last year. Dan Quinn spoke about Terry McLaurin, but we're going to save that for the end, okay? He had 3 different quotes on Terry McLaurin. There were other things, though, that I thought were worth playing. This was Dan Quinn, number 1, Max. Dan Quinn talking about the key for what has been some rhythm, a connection, some consistent success in practice anyway, in the connection with Jaden Daniels and Deebo Samuel.
2 receiver questions. First is on Deebo. You guys have said he's come in, he's looked in great shape. His connection with Jaden seems to be pretty good. What is the key for him in sustaining this, and what have you seen from him just mentally and that willingness to take on that challenge? Yeah,
it's a good question. I think he is in great shape. That was the one, I think, first that you could tell, like, he really put the work in physically, but also from the neck up, learn a new system, being in different ones. It is different, than the system that he has been a part of. So I thought he really worked hard on that part. Maybe a silver lining is the extra time that he has now with Jaden. And so sometimes when, Noah and Terry aren't there and he gets more, like sometimes there's unintended consequences that can take place that you see that's good. And I think that would maybe one of those that you're probably seeing now, Nikki.
You always get that, right? When somebody's holding out or somebody's injured, the guy that is stepping up and getting the most work with the starting quarterback, there's benefit, as he says, unintended consequences, but positive consequences in this case. I feel like Deebo Samuel's going to have a year. I really feel like Deebo Samuel has a chance to have a big season. It's a contract season. When he's been healthy, and that's the key with him, when he's been healthy, he's been not a good player, a great player. Let's not forget that this guy was a top 10, and he's a weapon more than just a receiver. We understand that about Deebo Samuel. But when they were, front office execs on the ESPN thing, the players vote on the NFL Top 100, Deebo was 30 in the league last year. 30th best player in the league is voted by his peers this time last year off of the 2023 season, in which, by the way, he, only had 60 catches in 15 games for 892 yards. But when he is right, he is capable of a 70-catch season and a 300-yard rushing season. 60, he's capable of 70 catches, 1,200 plus yards, 6-7 receiving touchdowns, and then add another 300 rushing yards and another 6 to 7 touchdowns. He's capable of that. He's capable of being a difference maker offensively. So, is this part of what's working against Terry? Their belief that Debo's in shape, he's in a contract year, and he's going to be a dominant weapon for them? I mean, I'm not going to be surprised if Debo Samuel ends up being their most dominant weapon this season, even if Terry, well, not even if, when Terry gets back. I think Debo's got that potential. I think Debo, during his 6-year career, at his best, was a truly unique, gifted, elite-level player. And nobody plays harder. Nobody's more physical. Nobody gets more yards after the catch or after contact as a runner like Debo does. Debo could be a massive difference maker for this team this year. I'd bet on it. Before the season starts, we'll get some of his over-under numbers for the season. But I have a feeling this could be a big season for Debo Samuel. Quinn was asked today about something he's been asked about before, but now that we're a couple of weeks into training camp, let's hear the answer. But he was talking about the main areas of growth for Jaden Daniels in year 2.
I've noticed a lot of things. He's really on it. I mean, we know this. We've talked about work ethic. We've talked about those. Now you see other levels of making others better. This is what I saw. This is the correct spot, a change of a protection. So now he's able to, help develop others and help them fulfill what they can be. And so that's a big deal. And that comes with communication, experience, feedback. You're not quite able to do that, your first, day on the job, but you gain street cred by your performance, by the things that you do. And then people trust him. And so, hey man, this is what I see. This is where the ball would go. And as a teammate, okay, you want to hear that information because that's giving you feedback. This is what I need to do to help you in this spot. So that's what I'd see, just him compounding and making others better just by his communication, the way he's leading. So those would be some of the things that I've noticed so far.
Yeah, didn't he boot somebody out of the huddle?
That was the report on ESPN.
What'd you say?
That was the ESPN report that he did that. And
right.
People also said that they saw it happen to Ja'Cory Brooks at some point during camp as well. So
yeah,
that might have been it.
Look, there's always the, what comes first, the confidence in that quarterback or the action, because of his status, because of his draft status, or do they have to really see it? You got to really see it. And they saw it. I know that there was all that talk last summer about him in camp. I mean, there was a lot of people that were predicting, as he went through camp, that this guy was ready and that he was on it. As Dan Quinn said, he knew the offense from day one. But like Quinn just said, you gain street cred by performance. Things you're not quite able to lead in the way that you want to lead on your first day on the job before you prove, especially to older players, yeah, you're the guy. All right, there's more Quinn here I want to play for you before I get to something that I do want your thoughts on as well. But he was asked about what's impressed him most from the rookie class. Here's what he said. Number 7.
During the off season, leading up to camp, knowing that, man, we have to get this knowledge down. So when you do get to camp, there's not the thinking and you can just rely on the system and get better at your skills. So it's a very mature group, guys that really put it in. We've been encouraged by that. It's a smaller group, so they probably got more individualized attention and customized for them with 15 rookies. Usually it's, anywhere probably between that number and, 25 or so. So with a smaller group, I think they've had good mentors. They've had, good coaching, and now they're gaining confidence. There's definitely days that go good and others that don't, but that's also part of it. And I want to see, the resilience to come back from the days that aren't. But what I've seen so far is guys that know what they're doing. They're prepared. They're ready to go put their best foot forward. And that's why these practices where coaches are off to the side, man, like they have to demonstrate what they know, how they can communicate, and knowing that, like, when it's your turn to lead, like, do it. That's your communication. That's your call. So don't wait. You got to go take it.
Dan Quinn on the rookie class. All right, when we come back, you'll hear what he said about Terry McLaurin. He was asked, I think, multiple questions about Terry today because Terry was out there and Terry was talking to Adam Peters. And then you're going to hear Dan Quinn and what he said about the wide receiver position right now without Terry. Interesting answers from him on that. That's next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com.
All right, here's what's happening on this Tuesday, August 12th. Barstool Sports employee and former NFL head coach John Gruden has won his case against the NFL and Nevada Supreme Court. Gruden accused the NFL of leaking damaging emails in 2021 before resigning from his head coaching job with the Las Vegas Raiders. The NFL will likely appeal the decision all the way up to the Supreme Court. Until then, we will have more updates. Commanders, Burgundy and Gold inter-squad scrimmage is today out in Ashburn. Cliff Kingsbury and Joe Witt were the head coaches of their respective squads, with assistant coaches calling the plays. Players that sat out of today's scrimmage were wide receiver Noah Brown, Terry McLaurin, Marcus Mariota, Sam Cosmi, Brandon Coleman, Javonte Jean-Baptiste, Jordan McGee, Bobby Price, Jonathan Jones, and Bill Merritt. Plus, the Nats, they fall by a score of 7-4 to the Kansas City Royals after Jackson Rutledge gave up multiple 2-run home runs in the 6th inning. That seemed to be all she wrote for the ball club last night. They will reset today and look to get one back versus Kansas City. First pitch at 7:40. Nats on deck with Charlie and Dave at 7:10. This update is sponsored by the Team 980 YouTube page. Just open the app, type in the Team 980, hit subscribe. Kevin Sheehan is live from 10 to 1, and Craig Hoffman from 4 to 7. Don't forget to like the stream and turn on notifications to stay up to date on all things DC sports. And that is what's trending.
All right. Quinn was asked today if you missed sort of the picture that's out there that JP Finley put out. Adam Peters and Terry McLaurin were talking earlier this morning. I think that's a good sign. I mean, I'm not looking to make a huge deal out of it, but to be honest with you, the two, I mean, it's more agent and Adam Peters, understood, but the fact that they're comfortable talking, and we don't know what they were saying, maybe in a very cordial way physically. They were the opposite of that in the words that were coming out of their mouths, but I don't think that's the case. I actually think that's a good sign. But anyway, Dan Quinn, before today and their intra-squad scrimmage, was asked a few questions about Terry, and here they are. This is the first one. 2.
Yeah, I don't have any big updates for you on that. As far as timelines go, the guys have an off day tomorrow, and then as we're working into, the practices prior to next game on Monday night, maybe I can give you some insights then, but no updates to share with you today.
All right. Then he's asked about the level of optimism on where things stand with Terry. Immediately after that answer, here's what he said.
Yeah. Look, you want everybody as the coach out on the field at every practice, every game. I also know that that's not reality either. And so I just try to make sure, man, like just keep pouring into the guys, keep digging into it. I know it is, part of our game where, you don't have everybody all the time. It does, in some ways, there's contingencies. How do you work? How do you feature guys? And so I was kind of referring to like Debo, maybe getting more connection time to go. But as far as like where I'm at, I also I'm aware things happen, and you adjust. And that's kind of what coaching is, and you don't have your full roster all the time, and you put yourself into those spaces pretty regularly. And then when those come up, you feel more normal doing that. When everything's healthy, you have to force it. When the injuries and things come up during this time of year, it happens naturally. Okay, let's feature it. Let's see what happens. And I like doing that too.
That's actually really interesting, right? Because, people will always say, well, the coaches, they just kind of compartmentalize. It's like, yeah, he's not here, but let's just pretend that he's injured because the injuries happen. But it's hard when they're not injured. And he sort of implied that. So the ankle thing, who knows? There is this possibility he could end up on that reserve, list to start the season where he's getting paid for missing games. It's got to be a real injury, right? I think. Very end of the presser, he was asked about Terry McLaurin again. This time, is he still in the building?
Just to go back to Terry for a quick sec, we haven't seen him for a couple of days. Has he still been with you guys?
Yes.
Every day, and is he still meeting with the training staff every day? And
correct. Yep. All of it. All right. We'll allow one more because Ben took 2.
It is funny though, but back to the other answer, the fact that he mentioned Debo and the work that Debo's getting, maybe more work in the connection, but he wants to. It's hard for a head coach when the player is available and he's healthy. He said you have to force it. Like you got to force, not recognizing that he's healthy and could be out there. All right. There were 2 questions that Quinn was asked about where the receiver situation is right now. The first question is specific to what has he learned about the receivers in camp without Terry and without Noah Brown. Here's what he said.
How much have you learned about the other receivers too, good and bad, because Terry and Noah haven't been out?
Yeah, that is it. And there's these opportunities that come up, and we were just kind of talking about, some of the rookies. And the 2 rookie receivers have done a nice job of knowing what to do, how to do it. They've played outside, a little bit inside, but mostly on the outside. And so I've been encouraged by what I've seen. I mean, let's face it, getting trained by Bobby and Andre, that's a pretty good setup, for guys coming in to show what they can do. So I'm encouraged. I want to see more. How we would feature people in different ways, that's part of coaching. I think the best can figure out ways to do that, but I'm excited. I want to see more.
Excited, wants to see more. Talk specifically about the two rookies. That would be Jalen Lane and Ja'Cory Brooks. Brooks had 5 catches in the preseason game for whatever it's worth. And then there was a follow-up to it. And if the question's there, you can play it. But he was essentially asked, how do you feel about the receiving group heading into the season?
We're asking a lot about the number 2 receiver. Who would it be and all that. How do you feel about this group overall at this point and going into the season?
Yeah, Jalen's been one that I've been impressed with in the slot. He's been somebody that I've seen in that role, and I've seen Debo in that side. You've seen Debo move outside some, so I like what I'm seeing from those two. Obviously, like Noah and Terry, like they're making progress to come back, but having those guys get more, John, there is a good unintended consequence of that. So I'm excited to see more of that, quite honestly. As far as a 2 in that way, how we feature Debo inside, Terry and Noah are more outside. Do we move guys around? Yeah. But I'm excited to see, Debo some outside, Jalen some outside. I've seen them more in the slot, and they're doing a nice job. But, that it's a fun part to go through to say, and what else? And so you don't want to overload somebody, but you do want to find out.
There's been a lot of good things coming out of coaches' mouths about Jalen Lane, but he specifically said in the slot, I think we all understand that that's where the fit would be, other than punt returner, which he's going to be more likely than not the week 1 punt returner. Debo gets moved around. He said he's been on the outside, and they like him on the outside a little bit, but Debo, when we see him as a receiver, we see him more as a slot guy. Obviously, you see him as a fly sweep. You see him as a back a lot of times in terms of the way he lines up. Look, Terry's going to be there, but in the event that the long shot possibility came in, which is he held out a couple of games or he ended up on the PUP reserve list, who would be the other outside receiver? And the one that you would have in Noah Brown, his health, I think he's going to be fine, but will he stay fine? That would be the interesting development there, is if for whatever reason this continues and we get to the point where it's a possibility of him holding out or a possibility that they're going to put him on some sort of reserve PUP list, which, by the way, is like, 4 to 6 weeks, something like that. Who's the other outside guy? It sounds like it would be Debo, maybe. That's not really ideal. That's not ideal. And then you look at, what's out there? They decided to work out 14 guys on Sunday. Not one wide receiver was worked out. Not one wide receiver was signed. I don't think they are alarmed at the situation now. You just heard Quinn. You didn't hear alarm. You heard excitement about the 2 rookies, excitement about Debo. They know what Noah Brown is. Noah Brown is a favorite of Jaden Daniels. He's got to be healthy and on the field. But in terms of another outside guy, I'm looking at the list. Beckham Jr. is still out there. Amari Cooper is still out there. But like Ben said earlier, if you get to that point and you legitimately feel like you got to go sign, those guys are looking to get paid a little bit. So that's not what I don't think this front office would be looking to do. If you want to weigh in real quickly, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. You just heard what Dan Quinn said about Terry and about the other receivers in camp. Do you think, like many do, that by not playing in the joint practice and then on Friday night against the Patriots, that it really helped out Terry's cause? 301-230-0980. Did not playing help Terry a lot? I personally don't think it gave him much leverage. I don't. I can't imagine that they were alarmed by what they saw and then decided not to bring in one wide receiver for a workout when they had 14 guys in on Sunday. I think that's a bit of a tell. You just heard what he said. Do you think Terry gained something by not playing last week in Foxborough, both the joint practice and in the preseason game, or that he gained nothing. I think personally he didn't gain much at all, not in terms of financial leverage. I don't know how, honestly, you can gain that much without a slew of injuries before an actual regular season game. Quinn talked about, how they're going to be used and how they'll scheme it up without him. I'm sure they have a plan with Debo, with Jalen Lane, with Noah Brown, with maybe Luke McCaffrey. They're going to have a plan. I can't see this team completely inept without Terry McLaurin. Do I think they're a better team or as good a team without him? No, I don't. But I don't see him falling apart. Let's go to Bill in Arlington. Do you think Terry gained a lot of leverage by not playing last week, late in the week, both joint practice and preseason game? Go ahead.
Not really. I think the risk with those guys is that they come in and some freak injury happens and everybody blames it on lack of prep. And we've seen that movie before with, some other people. So one other comment for you. I would rather stick with the young Bucks and McCaffrey and all those other guys than go after Beckham, who to me hasn't been the same since his injury, and Cooper, who is getting on the far side of being even halfway useful.
Yeah, Cooper really kind of fell off, didn't he? Odell Beckham
and he's
Jr.
probably a high dollar guy for his age.
Yeah, I thought it would work out much better in Baltimore with Beckham Jr. But anyway, thanks for the call. Appreciate it. Let's go to, this happens all the time at the end of the show. Paulie just waits until 12:52 to call in. Go ahead.
Hell to the W, man.
Hell to the
I'm
W.
lurking like a shark. Sock City. Hey, look, man, that was all coach speak. It's all coach speak, man. He's not gonna say anything negative, but yeah, I do think I ain't gonna say he gained a lot of leverage, but he's gained some leverage. I mean, you just listen to the people you had on your show today. Diana Russini was saying the Patriots coaches was yelling across the field about how, man, y'all really miss Terry.
That's by the way, that's coach speak too.
It is, but it ain't. It's obvious.
Well, it's not when it doesn't work for your narrative. But that's a lot of coach speak too.
Listen, man, the coach is not going to come out and talk negative about anything. But he did put it into perspective where they don't see Debo or Jalen Lane really as that outside threat.
Yeah.
Like you said, they're nice out there. They can play occasionally, but that's not where they're going to be. Ben Standig said the team looked like it struggled with the players being, with the on the inter-squad scrimmage today. The offense was clunky. If the receivers wasn't getting open or he didn't have time to throw or whatever the situation was. But my whole point is that you're getting reports about it's not looking good in the receiver group. You can't just brush that off because the head coach come up here and talk positive. He's not going to talk negative to the media.
Yeah, but their actions haven't spoken to any sort of alarm.
Well, the actions haven't spoken to any sort of alarm in this whole offseason. They knew where the numbers stood with them, and they didn't make a move in the draft. They didn't make a move in free agency. They haven't made a move, in the later stages of free agency. So, I mean, you can say their actions haven't spoken to that the whole offseason.
Okay.
So, I mean.
But they all of a sudden the actions the inaction hasn't changed over the last week.
Because they're banking on the fact of what you're saying, that at the end of the day, he's going to play this year.
Right.
Either way.
That's right.
That's what they're banking on. But that doesn't mean the risk, is a good thing to risk. Like, I think they're in some bits of denial of what's going on. This can go south real quick.
What'd you say?
You, man. I said, this can go south real quick.
Well, the South would be what you've suggested in the past, and that is missing the bulk of camp hurts him in terms of, what they're doing and what they've been doing, and could potentially literally hurt him with some sort of soft tissue injury or something. I hope we don't see that.
Listen,
but
you don't think it's hurting the team right now in cohesion?
I think it could be. I just acknowledge that you could that may be the biggest risk right now of letting it draw out.
Well,
I agree with that. It's one of the better points you've made all year.
If he comes back and play, then that's going to be the cohesion is going to be a problem. But like I said, Quinn is not going to come out here and speak negatively of Terry or any other receiver or in that position. He's going to be positive because he don't want to open up a can of worms.
I know.
The writing's on the wall, man. The writing's on the wall. Just listen to everybody reports. I mean, if you're not going to listen to the reports, then why have them talk about it?
Well, it's not whether or not I'm listening to the reports. It's whether or not the reports are accurate or how they feel, because their actions over the weekend would indicate that there's not like major concern, because they would have brought in a receiver or two to work out on that open day Sunday. They would have done that. They didn't bring in one.
Any receiver that they bring in is not going to be on to Terry's level or what they need. Beckham is not going to give them.
It doesn't matter. At this point, you need another outside receiver just for the rest of camp until Terry reports.
And we need to stop with this Noah Brown savior thing, too. He's hurt all the time.
Who's done that? That's straw man. Nobody said that.
No. A lot of people like to bring Noah Brown up like he's a big factor. He's a pedestrian possession receiver at best. And we've seen that in the second half of the season last year. Once teams found out he wasn't going to run past nobody, he basically was ineffective until he got hurt.
All right. See, I got to run. Thanks to Ben. Thanks to Neil in Rockville. Thanks to Diana Russini. Thanks to Max. Back tomorrow. Chris is next.